When a sandwich gets promoted to leadership enablement, your books are lying to you. I knew at the moment I saw the receipt. A $15 lunch had been given a title grand enough for a keynote, and an approval stamp that looked pleased with itself. The approval was not a rubber mark. It was a fingerprint. My name is Evelyn Hart. I am a senior operations analyst at Northbridge Logistics in Minneapolis. I deal in ledgers, timestamps, and what the human eye does when it meets a line that wishes to be straight. I do not raise my voice. I adjust the angle. After the merger, Northbridge discovered new language for old habits. We were innovative disruptors now, and innovation arrived with a memo that thinned our approval chain from 3 signatures to 1. The one belonged to the new vice president of operations, a well-dressed reformer named Derek Vale. The memo carried his tone. We are not the Internal Revenue Service. Let us move fast. Fast is not a number. Fast is a curtain. Speed began to collect on my screens. Small entries that slid beneath thresholds. Vendors whose names tasted like abstractions. Atlas Meridian LLC, Vantage Path Group, Everline Horizons LLC. Wyoming addresses that pointed to metal boxes in strip malls. Invoices at $24,800, replicated at a measured distance, like footsteps in fresh snow that never break stride. 9 payments in a quarter. Everyone approved within 24 hours. Everyone signed by the same hand. I built what I always build when something refuses to stop repeating. I called it unexplained. Not a spreadsheet this time, but a living page of rules. If an invoice shared a fingerprint with another an identical vendor token, a timing pattern, or a routing seam, the panel turned the color of a warning. When the 5th alert lit in a single morning, I paused. The line wished to be straight, and it was no longer pretending. The company's voice found me before lunch. Human Resources scheduled what it called a touch base, which is what offices call a blade when they wish to be polite. The conference room was small and windowless. Candace Rowe, the HR director, smiled with her eyes fixed and kind. Beside her sat Jess Moran, reliable with notes. We have noticed an unusual volume of file activity, Candace said. Minor, but we prefer to be proactive. There are instances of documents being transmitted outside our environment. I review reports on weekends, I said. Our deadlines are tight. I understand, she replied. Going forward, we recommend only approved tools. She glanced once at the ceiling camera, then back at me. We would like you to sign an acknowledgement of best practices. It is standard. I read it carefully twice. It said nothing about what I had discovered. It said everything about who was watching whom. I signed. Then I went back to my desk and stopped using anything that could be misnamed as a door. No more personal email. No more remote portal if the portal remembered me. At home, I mirrored my evidence to an off-site drive registered to a consulting shell I had created years ago for freelance work that never arrived. I did not discuss the change. I simply laid brick with quiet hands. Numbers tell stories when you ask them the right questions. The questions began to trace a man. Derek had arrived with a clean resume and a portfolio of words. His posture suggested rescue. His calendar suggested debt. A public filing revealed that he had co-founded a startup called Helios Quant that had failed with noise. A separate record suggested a margin call. I found a consulting agreement between Helios and a vendor with no employees and a mailbox for an office. I could not prove motive with paper, but the paper arranged a silhouette. At the town hall, he moved through the room with ease. He quoted leadership literature as if it were scripture, and the team nodded in a rhythm they hoped would be rewarded. Before he finished, I asked a single question. Can you explain, I said, why a training vendor without a W-9 was released within 24 hours? The room breathed in. He did not blink. We do not allow compliance to paralyze innovation, he said. We are building momentum. Momentum is not a signature either. But his answer placed one more stone. I returned to the unexplained dashboard and added a rule for missing tax forms. The panel lit again. 2 payments to Everline Horizons LLC within a single quarter at precisely $25,000 each, just below the automatic review line. I traced the approvals to a digital signature that matched the town hall smile. I traced the login to an internal token that did not belong to anyone else. By then I had more than notes. I had a structure. I did not need volume. I needed sequence. I assembled a 7-page summary titled Red Ledger Executive Summary. It was calm. It was exact. It did not accuse. It arranged. Page 1 set the pattern. Page 2 explained the threshold behavior. Page 3 mapped addresses to boxes. Page 4 overlaid timestamps with approvals. Page 5 attached the memo that simplified the chain. Page 6 paired a missing tax form with a release. Page 7 contained a single email from Derek. Let us not allow compliance to paralyze innovation. Release the funds. I did not send the full archive. I sent the summary with a cryptographic hash of the complete file set, so that anyone who attempted to alter a page would summon the evidence of its own wound. I addressed it to one person only, Noah Patel. Noah once sat 2 rows from my desk, an internal auditor with the gift of seeing numbers as footprints rather than blocks. The new regime had thinned his department until quality became a poster. He left for a larger firm that still believed a ledger was a promise. We had not spoken in a long time. I did not write a preface. I wrote a request, review request, the subject line said. Red ledger summary attached. If I am wrong, I will close my folder. If I am right, please tell me how to proceed. I hovered over the word send. I do not put drama on a button. I pressed it. Then I closed the laptop and waited for the room to become a room again. In the hour that followed, the building returned to its choreography. The printers sang. The stairwell murmured. The floor manager congratulated someone for reducing costs by eliminating a verification step that had kept the river inside its banks. I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured coffee that had lost its courage, and returned to my screen. The unexplained panel had one new alert. Vantage Path Group had received 2 releases from separate departments that had never attended training. The routing number curved back to an agent that once represented Helios Quant. The line no longer wished to be straight. The line had begun to confess. My phone vibrated against the desk. A single message lit the glass. It did not spend any words. Received. Do not delete anything. I am escalating. The morning did not arrive. It assembled. Pieces of light found the edges of my desk and laid themselves down like careful tools. I opened the unexplained dashboard and watched it wake. 3 new alerts appeared before the first cup of coffee had the courage to be warm. Everline Horizons LLC had received 3 payments in a single quarter, each one signed by Derek Vale. The approvals matched his user token and his 2-factor timestamps with a neatness that felt rehearsed. 2 other vendors rose beside it like reflections in a calm lake. Atlas Meridian and Vantage Path Group, each with cloned timing, each cleaving to the same threshold line below automatic review. I moved slow as if pace could protect what it touched. I laid the approvals across a timeline and placed the user logins above them. The sequence locked like teeth. It was not a pile of transactions. It was a design. At mid-morning, the company gathered for a town hall. A stage had been raised in the cafeteria, and the room filled with the polite murmur of people who wished to believe they were being rescued. Derek stood in a measured light. He wore the grace of a man who expected applause. His slides spoke of momentum and transformation. He said the word excellence, as if it were a destination he had already reached. When he invited questions, I lifted my hand. My voice did not rise. It entered the air and took its place. Can you explain? I asked. Why a training vendor without a W-9 was released within 24 hours? The room inhaled. Derek's eyes flickered for half a second, a camera searching for focus. He smiled in a way that suggested calm was a skill. We will not allow compliance to paralyze innovation, he said. We are building momentum. There are answers that close doors. There are answers that open them but reveal a hallway without lights. The room shifted. Heads tilted. Someone dropped a pen and did not pick it up. I did not speak again. I allowed the silence to do its work. Back at my desk, I prepared a mirror. On the company machine, I created a folder named Quarterly Cleanup. It held curated versions of my files, clean enough to appear harmless, fragrant enough to invite curiosity. File names were ordinary. Training Adjust Q2 XLSX, Vendor Map Notes.docs, Policy Sync Outline PDF. Each file carried a watermark and a canary token, a small beacon that would speak if touched. The point was not to hide. The point was to learn who reached and with which hand. Before I finished arranging the decoy, an email arrived. HR follow-up, subject line said. Conference room B at 2 eyes. I closed my folders with the care of a librarian and walked to the room at the appointed time. Candace Rowe waited with a security officer in a navy polo. Jess Moran sat to one side with a tablet aligned to the table's edge. The camera in the ceiling hummed with the soft patience of a winter insect. Candace did not use greeting as a bridge. "We have completed a review of your file activity," she said. "There have been transmissions of internal documents to external addresses. Regardless of intent, this is a breach of policy." She slid a typed memo toward me. Words lined the page like soldiers aware of their posture. "Effective immediately, your employment is terminated." I did not argue. I placed my badge on the table with both hands, as if it were an object that remembered kindness. "Please list the file names you are alleging I transmitted," I said. "I would like a copy of that list for my records." Jess tapped her tablet. A printed sheet arrived from the hallway printer with obedient speed. I read down the columns. 2 file names did not exist on my machine. They existed only inside Quarterly Cleanup, a folder I had created that morning, a folder no one was supposed to see. I looked up. No one met my eyes. The security officer stood. His face was respectable and blank. "May I retrieve my personal items?" I asked. "Under your supervision." "You may," Candace said. We moved together down the aisle of cubicles like a small procession. Colleagues kept their eyes on their screens with an intensity that felt like prayer. I took my planner, my mug, and a photograph of my dog. I did not take the small metal paperweight that had balanced my folders for 6 years. Some objects carry the weight of their own meanings. They belong to the rooms that shaped them. At the elevator, I felt my phone vibrate. I did not check it. I allowed the doors to close. The lobby smelled like polished stone. The security officer opened the glass door and stepped aside. Winter air met my face and decided to remain. Outside, I read the message. It was from Noah. "Pre-engagement secured with the board," his text said. "Do not delete anything. We are preparing access." A second message followed as I stood on the curb. "If any internal system touches your files, we will see it." I found a quiet bench 2 blocks away and opened my personal tablet. The unexplained dashboard had a sister page only I could reach. It showed the canary tokens as small, watchful lights. One by one, 3 of them blinked. Quarterly. Cleanup Training Adjust QoS opened inside Northbridge's network at 2:37 p.m. Vendor mapnotes.docx opened at 2:41 p.m. Policy Sync Outlined PDF attempted to open at 2:43 and failed due to permission. Rules that should not have been altered. The internal IP addresses stamped themselves across the log with the clarity of handwriting. The logs forwarded to my attorney the moment they were born. The trap did not celebrate. It recorded. I returned home before dusk settled against the windows. The apartment held its breath until I entered. My dog lifted her head and rested it again, satisfied by the sound of my steps. I placed my box on the table, opened my laptop, and composed a message. "Time release link initiated," the subject line said. It was addressed to my attorney and blind copied to Noah. The body was spare, mirror folder triggered by internal access. Attached, token logs, IP map, timestamps, file paths, hashes match red ledger summary. Proceed. Before I could close the lid, my screen flashed with an incoming call request. Derek Vale wished to schedule a handover via company Zoom. The calendar invite asked for 10 minutes. I accepted, then opened a recorder and announced that the meeting would be captured for accuracy. He arrived in a window filled with office light, and the thin confidence of a man who believed his mask remained his face. "Thank you for joining," I said. "I would like to hand over outstanding tasks." "Of course," he replied. "Please keep this brief. 3 questions," I said. "Yes or no will suffice, with a date where relevant." He nodded. "Question 1, I said. Were funds released to Everline Horizons LLC on June 2nd without a W-9 on file? A beat. "I am not certain. I would have to verify." Question 2, I said. On May 29th, did you authorize 2 payments of $25,000 each to Everline Horizons, both within 24 hours, both below the automatic review threshold? He looked beyond the camera. "I do not recall the amounts." I brought the memo onto the screen. Your email of May 29th, 11:38 a.m. reads, "Let us not allow compliance to paralyze innovation. Release the funds." Is that your email? His jaw moved once as if he had remembered an old pain. "I will need to consult with legal," he said. Question 3, I said. Did your user token approve Atlas Meridian LLC on June 12th at 9:14 a.m. with a routing number linked to a registered agent previously retained by Helios Quant? The window stilled. Then his screen went black. Silence does not always mean absence. Sometimes it means a room has chosen to hear itself. I sat in that silence and felt the shape of fear and the outline of resolve. It was not triumph. It was the precise balance between them. My phone vibrated once more. A single message arrived from Noah. Board authorized emergency access. Forensic Demon Root. 30 minutes. The numbers stood in the room like a clock that had forgotten to pretend. They did not knock. 4 figures crossed the marble of Northbridge's lobby and passed the reception desk with measured purpose. Their suits were the restrained gray of winter skies. Their badges flashed once and disappeared. The elevator doors opened as if expecting them. When the doors closed, the screen above the guard station changed. Systems under freeze. Legal hold issued. On the executive floor, the conference room waited like a stage that had rehearsed silence. The long table reflected the overhead light as if it were glass laid over ice. The lead auditor stood at the head with a posture that suggested steady hands. He did not sit. He placed a single sheet of paper in front of him and lifted his eyes. "This invoice," he said, voice even, the syllables precise. "Everline Horizons, LLC. Amount $38,450. Description: Empathy Optimization Workshops. Who approved this payment? No one spoke. The question moved through the room as if it had weight. The lead auditor turned the page and slid it to the center of the table. The print shone beneath the lights. Approved by D. Vale. The digital signature lay in clean text. A second page followed. A systems log with the calm cruelty of a clock. User ID. 2-factor confirmation. Timestamp. IP location. And device. Across from him, the chief financial officer swallowed and reached for his file. A narrow tremor entered his left hand. He found a sheet within the packet and paused. There, in a small box at the margin, lay a notation in clear letters. Flag submitted by E. Hart. The date was 2 days before the wire left the account. The flag had no response beside it. The space read, "No action." The lead auditor did not raise his voice. He allowed the room to hear the page turning. "We will return to empathy optimization," he said. "Let us first examine the pattern. 9 payments at $24,800 in a single quarter to Atlas Meridian. 2 payments at $25,000 to Everline Horizons within 24 hours. Several releases authorized without a W-9 or W-8 ban on file. An internal recommendation to hold payment pending documentation. An override email from Mr. Vale, instructing release to prevent innovation from paralysis. Do you dispute any of these facts?" Derek Vale sat with his hands clasped in a pose that resembled prayer and restraint. The skin along his jaw tightened. "I will need to consult with legal," he said softly. The lead auditor nodded once. He tapped a key and a diagram appeared on the screen. Arrows flowed like narrow rivers. Northbridge accounts. Shell vendor. Holding entity. Registered agent. The final node brightened. A small note appeared below it. Agent of record previously retained by Helios Quant. The room did not gasp. It settled deeper into its chairs, as if it had just been told how cold the next season would be. He returned to the first page and placed it beside the diagram. "There is a narrative in these entries," he said. "Amounts just below review thresholds. Missing tax forms marked pending, while funds nevertheless release. Overrides that reduce a 3-signature chain to a single hand. Flags submitted by an employee and ignored within the window that would have prevented disbursement. Each element by itself might be error. Together, they are design." The board members sat along the far side, eyes trained on the documents as though the pages might move. One of them, a woman with a pen that clicked once at every conclusion, leaned forward. "What do you need from us?" "Immediate cooperation," the lead auditor said. "Full forensic access to financial systems, procurement email and messaging channels. Preservation of devices. Interviews under counsel. No further deletion. No further edits. The legal hold is already live." Phones on the table buzzed within seconds. The board chair glanced at his screen, exhaled, and looked at Derek. "Effective now," he said. The words clipped clean of ornament. "Temporary suspension, cooperation required." You will surrender your badge and your laptop to the team. Human Resources will contact you regarding next steps. Derek did not stand. He nodded once, as if acknowledging a weather report that had turned from rain to ice. Candace Rowe, the HR director, shifted in her seat and began to compose a sentence that never found its end. The board chair turned to her. Prepare a written account of HR actions related to file activity and internal investigations, he said. We will need times, names, and the basis for decisions. Deliver it by end of day. Across the city, in a quiet apartment that knew how to keep the shape of silence, I set a kettle on the stove and watched the thin line of steam rise. I powered my phone and saw a voicemail from the CFO. His voice was careful and tired. Can we talk? He asked. It would help to understand the sequence. I did not press play a second time. I poured the tea and let the cup warm my hands. An email arrived from Noah. I read it aloud to the empty room because truth deserves air. Initiating full forensic sweep, it said. Scope includes payment processors, vendor onboarding, and executive approvals. CC inquiry probable. Clawback scenarios under review. Preserve all personal records. Do not engage with internal parties. We will handle communications. Another document followed. A checklist with 3 neat columns. Sanctions, clawbacks, vendor subpoenas. The boxes beside the first items were already marked. The marks were not dramatic. They were final. I moved to the wall where my notes had become an ordered constellation. It was not a map of chaos. Each string was short. Each pin had a label. One card waited at the edge, unconnected to the rest. Vanguard Alignment Partners. It had entered the ledger late, light as ash. The amounts were modest. The cadence was familiar. I traced the letters with a fingertip and felt the quiet thrill that attends an unfinished line. You do not end a storm by closing the window. You step outside and call the wind by its name. My laptop chimed. A new invitation appeared in the corner of the screen. Northbridge Legal. Meeting with General Counsel. Subject. Principal witness preparation. The time was set for the following morning. The location was a neutral office downtown. The body of the message asked me to bring identification and any personal records relevant to the Red Ledger summary. I sat back and listened to the apartment. The building sighed as pipes adjusted to evening. A bus passed 2 streets away and drew a low stripe of sound across the air. My dog turned in her sleep and settled. I felt the arrival of something that was neither victory nor relief. It was the steady presence of a truth that had decided to be seen. On the executive floor, the lead auditor closed his folder and thanked the room for their attention. The words were formal, but their cadence was human. As the board members stood, he collected the pages with care, as though the paper might bruise. Through the glass wall, the city extended in measured lines. Winter light pressed flat against the buildings. He glanced once at the diagram still glowing on the screen. The flow ended at a name, but not at an end. In my apartment, the invitation remained open on my laptop, the subject line bright. Principal witness. I considered the meaning of the phrase and the path that had braided itself beneath it. I did not answer the voicemail. I did not rehearse speeches. I washed the cup, dried it, and returned it to its shelf. When I turned off the lamp, the room held its shape in the dark. Somewhere inside Northbridge, a door closed on a badge and a laptop. Somewhere else, a printer spat out a list that would record what had been allowed to pass. The legal hold would hold. The sweep would begin. The wind had a name now, and the morning would ask me to speak it.